Well, tēnā tātou, welcome. So we're just 20 odd minutes, 25 minutes, just moving into stuff. Thank my fellow trustees for appointing me chair. So thank you for that. Vote of confidence and support. And yeah, we'll just open up, ask Tairāwhiti if we can open us up for the day and get into what is a pretty cool agenda.
Kia ora tātou, manuhiri tātata, ka tuku mihi rake Judy, o tira ia ki o tātou ma te hūro o te wāna, o e te panuku ki tēnei wāhanga o te tau, te marama o haki hea, te tiheru tia i te wai, tēnei wāhanga o te greenland. Bueno, kia ora tātou ki o tātou mate, kia tātou e kuri nei te mauri ora. Tira maramanuku, tira maramalangi, ko koe kai pauri ki ngā ko te tangata kia maa were ki ngā ko te tangata. Te rā te tūhiri ka tūhiri, te rā te tira marama, te rā te tira maka tira marama, hi koe te mahara tangohia i te atamai, hei pau tūhiri mō, hei pau kōrero mō, hei pau atamai, ka tiri tiri a ka tau pau a ngā kaupapa te tiri. Tīna, mi e hui e rā. Ura tātou.
We'll just move straight into, might just work through probably the agenda, through. So no changes to the agenda, everyone's okay with that. Apologies, so just to the head, to include no other apologies. And that by consensus, declaration of trustee and CEO interests, take it as read. Any adjustments or anything to that from anyone? Okay, move those as well. So there's a bit of a jump around just with the agenda, just our timing as well. So on one of our pages, we're pushing all the beneficiary presentations into this morning and working through to our break in that space. And then we'll kick back in. Appointment of chair has been done. And we've discussed the deputy chair process, which we will put in a pin into after summer and into our February meeting. We'll give the trustees time to kind of work over what a deputy might look like for them. Approval of open minutes, take that as being read. Are there any amendments or changes to those?
I'm showing as present, but also an apology, so Mal's going to fix it.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other changes?
Really? I was going to say that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah. People have any dream about that, don't they?
Ask one if you can be in two places at once, mate. I will take those as being approved by consensus. Actually, you're just nothing for us to be a public session. And now I'd like to move us into beneficiary presentations.
Yeah, couple of, so just a big mihi to Judy Campbell, who is our, I was going to say the CEO, but is our what's your title? Strategic advisor, particularly for Manaaki Tairāwhiti. She's no stranger to many of us here, but has been working very hard recently alongside iwi and other members of our social sector, particularly around quite a big pitch to the Social Investment Agency. So anyway, just Tairāwhiti are members of Manaaki Tairāwhiti, and so I sit on that board alongside others on that board. Our Mayor represents GDC on that board, but both boards and I sort of share the load in that space in terms of supporting some of the work there. So we are a member of Manaaki Tairāwhiti, so that we're part of their fund and they're part of our fund. So I'll hand over to Judy to give our kōrero around what's happening around the Social Investment Agency Community Commissioning pitch.
The papers were provided in your board paper, so I'm just going to kind of add some colour to the process rather than explaining it one by one. So this is a regional pitch to the Social Investment Agency. The Social Investment Agency was only created last year, and headline news was that it had a $200 million fund. But key point to note is the $200 million fund is attached only to Pathway 1, which is innovative social services. Everything that we're talking about here is current budget moved around. So commissioning, we've done about 12 or 13 of these presentations across the community. So we've kind of long had regional governance buy into the process, but we are making sure that we are shored up with community mandates, because that's going to be an important part of the decision making from government. And one of the things that we have to remind people who get worried as providers that in some way we're taking their place. Community commissioning is taking the place of the government in its relationship with the way in which social services are spent in the region. So providers will continue to have contracts. If we're successful, the contracts will come through a local entity that will make the decisions on how money is spent, as opposed to decisions being made in Wellington. So commissioning and involved commissioning is about that power of the Crown is moved to a local group. There's some methodology stuff built into that, some philosophical things, and that is to focus more on the outcomes and not so much on the methodology. And to think holistically rather than in pieces. So we talk all the time about people who have provider contracts will often have multiple contracts. So something like Ngāti might have 30 or 40 contracts with government agencies. And they might be about driver licensing, about non education and training, it might be some health stuff, it might be some social services stuff. But ultimately, the whānau who are the recipients of those services are often the same person, but the social workers or the support people who surround that whānau have to only operate inside of the narrowness of their contract. So if you're a kind order tenancy manager, you can go into a home, see some things, but it is not your job or your role to spend any time dealing with anything other than the house. So built into community commissioning is this concept of being more holistic around treating the whānau as a whole in the context in which their issues may arise. It's also about moving from ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Most funding in social services is triggered at the crisis point. So you don't get any help as a whānau until you've had a family violence call out or until your child has been suspended from school. So there's also a focus on this about funding decent preventative processes. So I'd say there's 3 pathways, and we're only talking here about pathway 3, which is community commissioning. There will be providers in our region who got, so far there are not any providers in our region who got the first 50 million that's been announced from pathway 1. Pathway 2, which is contract consolidation, where you get to take those 30 contracts, move them out of multiple agencies to only the social investment agency, and to have a different kind of contract. We had 2 on the shortlist, and I've just heard that 1 didn't make it through. So we believe Ngāti Social Services is still in the running for contract consolidation. And then pathway 4 is something that I'm sure that you're thinking about, because that's where the government is looking at both philanthropy and the way in which it invests in social services, and the cashed up iwi who can then become co-investors in processes. When we do these presentations, we get asked, who are you? Not personally, but who said that this group that you've put together has the right to make this pitch? And the answer is this is directly from the Social Investment Agency's website. So the reason for who are we is because we don't see this as an opportunity. This has been our strategy and work for the past 5+ years. So we already had these relationships. So Manaaki Tairāwhiti, I've personally been working on devolution for the last 5 years. The pitch under the last government was devolution to iwi. That's not on the table. That's why it's called community commissioning. It has to have a broader mandate than just iwi. And iwi have been working on devolution, of course, forever. Those of you who are involved in social services will know that from the 1980s onwards, there was a report called Tairāwhiti in about 1986 that said social services would be more successful if the decision making was moved closer to the whānau who have the issues. So we've got 40+ years of reports saying that this stuff would be better The most recent is the Productivity Commission's inquiry into persistent disadvantage. Again, said decision making would be more successful if it was moved closer to where the problems are. So the real issue is not, are we ready as a region? The real issue is the government ready to let go? So we as a region and the group that we've put together meet this criteria. So we've been data and evidence focused at Manaaki Tairāwhiti since our inception and actually pre-inception with the social sector trials. We've been a commissioner, we've had our own money, we've funded 14 social workers for the past 5 years at a couple of $1 million a year, and allowed them to do whatever it takes to work with whānau. And in return, so that we commissioned providers to employ these social workers, and in return they provided us with data. So if you come to our office, we can take you to an agile evidence room, which the Prime Minister was very impressed with when he saw, because he understands that kind of methodology. We can hold a mirror up to the social services as provided by the government and actually by locals and tell you why it doesn't work. This process of being mandated and supported by the community will be a key, because the government's aware of the degree to which in devolving to community, it needs to be that very broad sense of community. So the Commissioning Working Party that I represent is kind of chaired by Willie Chahal and me. So Willie represents Mahaki, but also Toitu Housing. Then Amo Haere, who many of you will know, Moira Brown and Leslie Jackson are out of Manaaki Tairāwhiti, but Moira is next chair of Ronga Whakaata. Tairāwhiti Ropia is Tūranga Health, or Dean and Malcolm from Trust Tairāwhiti are involved. Malcolm in particular because of that tying up of data and evidence and well-being. Simon Hunter is an independent economist, and so our figures about how much the government spends and what GDP uplift would happen as a result of this come out of the work of Simon. Josie's Manaaki Tairāwhiti. Taimania Clark is a policy person from Te Amakura, a policy shop in town, or nationally actually. And Te Pāri Mehana is, and Tairāwhiti are from the public service. So that's a combination of, it's not representative of the governance entities involved. It's a skill-based working party. When we do this presentation, we often get people saying, we need to be on the working party. To which the answer is, you probably need to be an owner of the process, but you don't need to be on the working party. Willie sent me a email as I was waiting there. He's an apology for today. He is chasing the recent announcement of 110 houses, 110 more social housing for Toitu for the region. So the Kainga order not allowed to build houses, community housing providers allowed to build houses. So he's just been meeting with the Prime Minister and ministers. And one of the things, and he takes every opportunity to pitch the region for community commissioning. And one of the things he said, the Prime Minister said, is you're talking my language. So state and social services, I tailor this presentation depending on who I'm speaking to. So if I'm speaking to providers, it's all about whānau wellbeing, which is absolutely at the heart of what we are doing and what we as a working party and as a government agree. But when we're talking to the government, we talk about return on GDP. So we have calculations that the government's spending about 1.4 billion in the region annually. That includes 800 million, which doesn't ever come to the region and is our contribution as a region to national offices in Wellington. And there's about another 1.4 billion, of which you are one of the contributors of local money that goes into social services as well. So everything that iwi spends, everything that you spend. And we believe that if we had local decision making and we were able to do what we would want to do, which is preventative intervention early, then we could grow local GDP by 1.8 billion in year 11. So there are something like 300 plus young Māori single mothers in our region. 40% of those are actually mahaki. So this is one of Willie's scraps. So when Willie's building his houses over by the hospital, he's got put aside 40 to 50 of those houses are for single mothers. And his intention is to wrap around them in their life in a way that is supportive of their desires, but is to look at the way in which they get pre and postnatal care, the way in which the baby is supported for the first 1,000 days, the education and training and support for the mother to get her back into productive employment, and then the pathway to home ownership. And so we take what's been a burden on the taxpayer and turn them into productive contributors to the economy. And if you do that en masse across the region, say the uplift locally is 1.8 billion. So the Prime Minister was here, as some of you would have been involved in, for the AMP show, and this presentation was provided to him, actually a more detailed one. As a part of our pitch is to prove that we are worthy to be considered for community commissioner. Cabinet's meeting this week. Somebody said to me there's a very Wellington moment happening, which is this money, as I say, is actually sliced appropriations. So this is not new money. This is money that is currently coming into the region, into MSD, into Wānanga Tamariki, into health, into education. And so the theory of the Social Investment Agency is that money will be taken off those entities and put into the Social Investment Agency for the Social Investment Agency to then contract in region. So the Wellington moment is, of course, all of those agencies going, oh, I don't know if that's a very good idea. I've already got stuff going on. I'm already devolving. I'm already having relationships with iwi. I'm already in year 5 of a devolution pathway. To which part of our answer locally would be, well, there's no evidence of any change really in the system. And to say that's Manaki Tairāwhiti's contribution to some of this is that we can prove that nothing's got better. I mean, you all know school attendance is not any better than it's ever been. Local GDP is declining, not increasing. Unemployment is increasing, not declining. Family violence call outs are about the same, and addiction is worse. So we look at this. And again, when I talk to people who've been around this stuff for 20 and 30 and 40 years, they say, we've tried all of this before. We've tried, whānau order, any kinds of Māori named initiatives. And the answer is, no, they haven't worked. Mostly because they've never been revolutionary enough. They've never given up enough control. And they've never really taken the Crown's hand off the decision making. And so there's that part of it. We think this has the rhetoric of this we believe in, and we believe it could work. Whether the Crown will actually live up to the rhetoric is anybody's guess. But we live by the don't ask, don't get. Got to give it a go. What else are we going to do? Just give up and be rolled over by central planning. So when we wrote to the Prime Minister, these organisations signed the letter. So you were one of the signatories to that process. And that's what I mean by we've kind of long had a governance level support of the region. So the Mayor signed, but recently I did the presentation to, Willie and I did the presentation to the whole of GDC. So now all the councillors know, most of the senior staff are involved. We've been presenting to the iwi trust boards. That Tairāwhiti Community Voice is a cluster of a network of NGOs. So we've now presented this to about 200 plus people. We get good feedback. We get lots of positive endorsement. We're asking for letters of support. So we've been getting those letters of support. We get lots of good questions which help us build the proposal. And we get, of all the presentations I've done, and I'm me, Willie and Amo are the key presenters. I've only had one that was kind of negative. And that was more, doesn't look revolutionary enough and looks like the same old people running the same old stuff. To which part of the answer is, this is not a revolutionary government. The revolutionary bit for them is to move from central control to regional control. And then they want a safe pair of hands, which is why all that stuff about community mandate and evidence and insights and past experience, because they do not want to make the front pages of the New Zealand Herald with misspent money. I think that inside of the confines of the system, actually, pretty much everybody that we're working with is trying to be innovative and revolutionary. It's the contract conditions that stop us. So we talk about asking for vote Tairāwhiti. I mean, we work closely with the senior management at the Social Investment Agency, and to be frank, Andy Costa's position in this process is not helpful, as in it's likely to make it even more conservative, as opposed to he was both negotiating that movement out of agencies and into the SIA, and making those commitments of this will work, I promise you this will work. So his reputation being in tatters is not helpful. So they may well think that they're talking about, 10 million here or 50 million there. We're talking about the 1.8 billion. So we've been talking to churches and schools and the health sector, because while realistically they may not be in tranche one, our ambition is for a vote Tairāwhiti process where the taxpayer spend in the region is decided by the region. And so our track is eventually, this is about surgeries, this is about school buildings, this is about asset management, because those are all of the things that mean this system has never shifted. Because when you get a little bit of money, when you get 10 or 50 million dollars, then you still have to plug the whānau into the rest of the system that still treats them the way the system has always treated them. So we want a vote Tairāwhiti process where significant scaled money is available to the region for regional decision making. So we've been working on draft operating principles, because if we get the principles right, then all the rest will follow. There's a Manaaki Tairāwhiti board meeting tomorrow, and I've written some papers on legal structure. So that challenge about who are you and who says you could do this, as I say, is partly also based on, does that mean that you're going to be in charge and you're going to decide? And these are directed at the individuals about where the money is, and the answer is no. That actually is one of the reasons why I don't resolve from the fact that many of us are in the senior bracket and have been around a long time. We're not building a nest for ourselves. We're not building an organisation where we see ourselves running it. We're building an organisation where the key principle is that it's owned by the community. There are lots of ways of creating that ownership structure. What I've proposed to the Manaaki board is a company with charitable status and shareholding, and that the shareholding is owned by clusters within the region. So I think that will fly. The probably more important question is, what's the balance and weighting of the way the shareholding is distributed, and what's the power basis? So the shares have no value other than the important decisions go back to shareholders. So strategic direction, etc., would come from shareholders, and the election of a skill-based board. So the voice of the community being heard in who becomes the board, but not representative and not people from each of those sectors. I've suggested a board of 5, of which 40% female and 60% must reside in the region minimums. And last night I was challenged and would agree. When I run these meetings, you'd be the only one where there is a majority of men in the room. The last time I ran it for 90 people, there would have been 85 women and 5 men. Social services is run by women in this region, and probably they should run the board too. And be the better for it.
No, Gertie, you got that wrong.
Key thing is that in replacing the crown, that we don't act like the crown, that we don't become master slave in these relationships. That this is actually about local decision making, about that strategic direction. What is more important to spend in crisis, to spend in prevention? Is it more important to spend on health interventions or housing interventions? That's what the board will do. But it's the provider who then decides how to actually work with whānau. One of the key things for us is to, we think this is a key principle, is rather than saying, show us your program and we'll decide whether we think your program is good enough. We think the key question is actually, what kind of a provider are you, and do you already have these characteristics? So are you already whānau driven? Are you already successful? Are you already agile? And are you already investing in evidence and insights? Like the Crown, some of the SIA people use the expression, whoever gets in the first round is holding the door open for everybody else. And if you do it badly, you'll have shut that door for everybody else. We believe that this first round of expressions of interest will be by invitation only. We believe that the number is very small that will be invited, under 10. Rumours are maybe only 3. We believe we are one of the 3. And we believe that because we can already produce these kind of providers. In reality, that means if they're risk mitigating, then it's not going to be 1.8 billion. It needs to be decent money. So I would hope in the hundreds of millions. But in order to do this properly and in order to do this independent of current systems, we would want to be scaled, and we would want to have probably only a small number of providers doing these kind of holistic contracts. That means that the region will run 2 systems for a period of time. The normal Crown system and then the innovative new system. The SIA, the man leading this stuff is from the UK, where devolution to regions is far advanced. So if you're interested, have a look at what Manchester Council was in charge of. We're in charge of everything in Manchester. Central government, over a period of time, have moved out and allowed the city council to make the decisions. Local government in the UK has always had much more to do with schools and policing and health than we have in New Zealand. But it's that Manchester is kind of the cutting edge of full devolution, and they're showing uplifts in GDP on the basis of local decision making around investment as opposed to profit motivations. We would want to have enough scale to be proving the case and to hold that door open for everybody else. I always say I work for Manaaki Tairāwhiti, I don't work for New Zealand Inc. If we take that 800 million that supports central government agencies and every region did that, then there can't be central government agencies anymore. That's their problem, not mine. Our issue is we think that we could take 800 million and invest it far wisely than paying for officers on the terrace. So you've already provided support through Doug and Malcolm and Ordine's involvement, and David signed the letter. But to say this is about making sure that when ministers are in town, when these comments are made in other circles, that everybody goes, oh yes, I know about that. We're a part of that. We're in support of that. So when I do this, I ask people for letters of support. We've already got yours, and say we're interested in feedback. So there's probably someone online taking notes in terms of any of the questions that you ask. We have an engagement report live as we gather the kind of comments and questions that people have, so that we can build this better. We expect the expressions of interest to be called for in January of next year, hence the kind of rush into Christmas to make sure we're ready. Decisions in March, and then the real money wouldn't move over until June 2027, because you could only move appropriations at the beginning or the middle of budget cycles, and the middle is October 2026, which is an election. That gives basically an 18-month runner for a design phase. So the contract that would be let next year would be a contract to design the process. We've been talking to Bill English to be a quality check and input into the bid that we make, on the basis that, as we say, we don't believe we could already write a pitch now in terms of how good we are and what we would do. What we are asking him to provide us with is all of that security for central government to work out how to be a partner in this process and not be the master. That's 40 years worth of theory always goes out the window because they cannot stop being the master. Or the alternative is abandonment. Here you have the money, we'll judge you in 5 years' time, but we won't judge you by the same criteria that we get judged, and therefore you'll always come off as failed because you're dealing with 150 years worth of colonisation and capitalism. So yeah, so that's the pitch, and happy to take any questions.
You answered one of my questions with, when you mentioned the Manchester man. And that's great, because there's always some merit in taking other people's ideas and making them better for our region. However, is there and yes, I'm not used to government, central government, especially so the lead up to this enormous. But is there do you have a strategy beyond, without going into the detail, but do you have a strategy beyond, applying the Manchester man's or ideas and then beyond, like really tailoring it?
One of the things, the Manchester's name is Joe Fowler, and one of the things he said to me most recently was, we're not building this policy around you, it's just that you fit the policy. So this has been a coming together of minds. We're not led by them. In fact, to say 5 years ago, we put a devolution proposal to central government, just as COVID was finishing, to say, look, we just proved it with COVID. We proved it again with Gabrielle. If you just give the money over, then the region knows what to do with it. And funnily enough, not much of it was wasted and none of it was corrupted. So yes, we've got our own policy agenda. The ultimate in this is actually that, and it's part of the importance of Trust Tairāwhiti's involvement, is that ultimately we don't want to be a beneficiary region. We want to be a contributor. Economic development, education and housing is the underpinning of preventative processes. So we want people in houses, kids in schools, people getting qualified and people having meaningful lives and meaningful jobs, as opposed to that we're working on family violence and prevention.
And part of the thing in my mind that needs to happen also is that I agree with you, we can potentially and highly potentially do a better job here, but we must create a situation where we get challenged.
Yes.
And grow further by doing it. What's your strategy on that?
So there's a slide there about learning loops, and so that's what we at Manaaki Tairāwhiti have been working on for years, is the feedback loop from the system that says this worked, this didn't work, without the panic of it didn't work, take the money out. Learning how to do it better. So that's why data and evidence is a big part of this. There's a system called the IDI, which is the unique identifier that's tracing everybody in New Zealand. The SIA is probably going to run mass accumulated cohorts where they'll compare, say, a region like ours with something similar, and then say, well, we did that investment over here, and in time we can see that they have less family violence call outs, less addictions, etc., etc. So the evidence will be in the background, and say, but the learning loop part of this is a key thing. That's why you have to already have this as a strategy, because you can't all of a sudden go, oh, fabulous, there's loads of money here, let's start inventing some new stuff. So Manaaki Tairāwhiti has a unique database that we developed from scratch with investment money from out of town. And to say we've traced 5,000 needs inside of 1,500 families and can show you why those needs weren't met. So we're already in that process of learning. But secondly, as I say, this is about getting to the point where Toitu Housing is a good example. Yes, they've gone from 5 million a year in housing to 5 houses a year to 50 houses. And accumulated input of about 150 million for those houses. But this next lot is not fully funded by government. It's about, Willie would tell you correctly, but it's either 40 or 60% funded by government, and the rest is funded by them. So they have a balance sheet now, which allows them to then take commercial loans, and so they are untying themselves from the Crown. And that would be our ultimate aim here too. If I talk about housing, which is one of my areas that I work in at Manaaki, so iwi Toitu Housing have built about 150 houses with 150 to come. Kāinga Ora have recently built about 200 to 300 houses. Private investment has built very little, but has done a couple of housing developments like Oakview on the other side of the road from the hospital. But the biggest single landlord in the whole region is Tairāwhiti and always will be, because they already had 1,200 houses. Council has 120, and actually the Eastland group still has 10 or 20 houses. None of the small players have enough of the balance sheet to then fund development, which is why we all go cap in hand to the government to say, can you fund some more housing? If we actually joined the balance sheets together, like if the region had control of the 1,200 Tairāwhiti housing, which is not that revolutionary, this is already happening in Porirua with Ngāti Toa. So maybe even if the asset's not handed over, as long as the balance sheet for a period of time is. Ngāti Toa has, I believe, 100-year lease on those houses. So Tamaki Regeneration, which is an Auckland model, which is the Crown and local government partnership, they were given about 1,000 houses. Of that, about a third goes into admin, a third goes into maintenance, and that leaves a third of the surplus of the rents to go into extended development. So there are things in here where we could cut ourselves off from Crown dependency.
Judy, I just want to applaud you and everyone involved with this initiative. It just makes so much sense. But I'm under no misunderstanding that what you're taking on is huge. Have you got governance is obviously going to be really critical, but then what's the level of confidence around capability to execute at the coalface?
I think that whether people live in region or not, and I'll say we have made that recommendation that the board be a majority of people who live in region. But you would all know of many talented people who have a connection to this region. Ngāti Porou have dominated the public services and education for generations in Wellington. This is one of the few places where there are multiple generations of degree holding whānau. We could attract that back into that board. We have ex-cabinet ministers, we have knights of the realm, we have all kinds of people in the region. I have no doubt about our ability to run this kind of stuff. Some of that council said, oh, if you take on the schools, you'll have to take on property management and union negotiations. Well, I was the chief executive of the Polytech and the council. Many of us are already experienced in that kind of stuff. We are already running schools, we are already running health services. There's nothing in this that we don't already do that we just want to scale. The hospital is a good example where people say, well, we can't possibly be running the surgeries. So no, we don't imagine that we're employing surgeons. But what people don't realise is that the decision whether we have 50 heart operations versus 50 hip operations is something that is decided in Hamilton. That's the decision-making power that we want.
I've got two questions, and I think it's best to keep them separate. So the first is just trying to understand the status of the opportunity. So we've got this messaging from the SIA that they're interested in working with organisations like this, like you. And I should say that I'm deeply on board with what you're doing. I've read a lot of the literature. I've worked in this area. Nobody will do it better than Tairāwhiti, having seen it in early stages around the country. So I think what you're doing is wonderful. Just a bit more interested in some of these core aspects to help us understand. So what is the status of the opportunity? Is there some sort of expression of interest in January, tell us?
Yeah, so Pathway 1 opened, they're very brief openings and closings. So Pathway 1 opened in about June or July. Pathway 2.
Sorry, is that a funding opportunity run by SIA?
Yeah, so can you go back to about slide 3 or 4? So this is all controlled by the Social Investment Agency. Pathway 1 has the 200 million. It opened and closed earlier this year, and the 50 million of that 200 million has just been announced. Pathway 2 opened and closed and has not yet announced, but is working through its shortlist. We believe that Pathway 3 and Pathway 4 have no written literature. The bit that I put up from the SIA's website is about all there is in writing. But we have posted the SIA senior staff and region. We have constant communication with them. And we understand that that will open in early 2026. And that it will be called an expression of interest as opposed to an application.
And so no details about the money.
We believe that's what the cabinet meeting this week will decide is how much. Our take is that they will absolutely want to do less than we're asking for. But it is Tairāwhiti traditional to push. So we will push for more.
Well, it's not a push really.
And for the region as a whole, we will push for more. And Willie's pathway, Willie can do you the presentation that says, and first I got 1 million, and then I went back to them, and then I got 10 million, and then I went back to them and I got 50 million, and now I'm getting 100 million. That's the pathway that we want to be on, except we want to start about, I'd predict, about 50 million, and then move into the serious money.
And second question, so what are you literally, as much as you know, proposed to set up? Is it a board that has an electoral college structure to vote for things going different ways, or is there a structure under it that's managing things? What does it look like?
I have, as I said, I'd share the papers, but the Monarchy board meeting tomorrow, so they're not yet public. So I've proposed a company structure with a charitable status and with shareholding, but no electoral college. I think that's an unnecessary middle thing. So it's a direct relationship between the shareholders and their share being a vote, basically. And then a legal entity that has a board and a backbone office. Manaaki Tairāwhiti has been directly funded by government for the past 7 years to the tune of several million a year. I've proposed that that be rolled into the backbone office in terms of whatever funding that has been coming for that should go into the process. There will be out of the 200 million funding to run the entity, not just funding to commission. So yes, a new legal entity, new because I don't believe that anything exists that has the characteristics of community ownership, full community ownership, but possibly built off some things that already exist.
And then staff in the region will be managing contracts and projects and monitoring and relationships and
Yeah,
like that.
yes, but light on admin, don't want to slice too much off the fund, and also don't want to just become a mini bureaucracy of the Crown. So more time spent on the learning loop and the research and the outcomes evidence than on the contract management.
So it would be focused on the decision making, and the rest would be continuing with BAU.
The rest would be scaling what's already innovative in the region. So if I use the example of Wānanga Health. So Tairāwhiti has numerous health contracts which are standard. He takes a little surplus off each of those and has created a pool where he does what he wants to do, and that's the Elgin Hub. So that is a cafe, a fitness centre and a health centre where what he talks about is those are gateways into the privileged space of the whānau home. And so through those gateways, he gets to find out what's really going on in the whānau and then is able to support that. That's a similar philosophy to Willie at Toitu. So start with a narrow gateway, end up holistically supporting the whānau.
I'm gonna keep things moving. That's okay, team. Great presentation. I've got two real quick things. One, what's your view on the other side of Parliament in terms of going into an election cycle, considering, the backbench might be happy, but
I was pitching devolution to iwi under Labour. So met with the Social Wellbeing Board, which is all of the chief executives of all of the agencies. I've been around a long time, many cycles of government. This stuff, the crisis is so acute, the money is so large, and the lack of progress is so clear that everybody's desperate for something new. So I would say this easily survives a change in government, but probably changes its name.
And the second one's just really a statement. You just talked around the Elgin Hub. So I live in that area, like literally just around the corner. Where if you look through the pack, there's a street along one side that where they're continuously running events.
Yeah.
That's been completely uplifted. I'm literally 100 meters down the road. That same street is one of the highest streets for gun violence. We've had deaths in that street. We've also had a lot of gang violence in that, just around the corner similarly. And then you've got the Wānanga just around the corner where events are being run in a similar fashion where all these things are coming together. So I've actually seen in a microcosm part of that community, a real uplifting. I feel it's safer, it's better for the kids. There's a lot of elderly now involved in those spaces as well. So I think Thursday, it must be Thursday day down at the coffee shop because it's packed.
Yeah.
And the community are really getting engaged and involved across that. So I think I've done it. I know there's similarly Tairāwhiti Health being involved in a lot of that space as well. So I think that's a really good example.
Well, and in the background of that is Mātai. So Tairāwhiti's on the board of Mātai. Mātai is involved in what he's doing in Elgin, but also Dr. Patrick McHugh bought buildings as a philanthropist investor, doesn't charge market rental. And so as a case study, they're a beautiful case study for this kind of government, private money, public money, philanthropy, all working together to uplift a troubled community.
I just wanted to personally comment on that bit because I thought that was a really good example that you can say to the team that that's happening well.
I've got a really quick question. What's the risk, or is it a risk, or what's the thinking around if Ngāti Porou get through pathway 2?
Actually, I should address Ngāti Porou. So when I put up the logos, Ngāti Porou was not there. So Ngāti Porou is not part of the community commissioning bid because they have not yet come to the conclusion whether it is better to have a horse in both races or whether to go for unilateral Ngāti Porou-ness. So they are considering whether the taumata, the settlement requirement to meet directly with the Crown and Crown partnerships would give them everything that I've just presented. Our opinion is the answer to that is unlikely under this government. Being directly told, don't talk about iwi devolution, that's not the stuff that we can go to here. Also, no, I'm live, I won't say that. It's a not yet decided to be part of it. They're still part of the Manaaki Tairāwhiti board, still seeing all the papers that I'm writing on all of this because they're going through a process of due diligence to decide whether they're part of this or not. They have not actually rejected it. So pathway 2, Ron Nephew made the comment that the pathways are the wrong way around. So if you'd done pathway 3 and devolved to regions, then you would have done pathway 1 and pathway 2 as part of that. The region would have done that. Yeah. But they've kind of gone low-hanging fruit to the more difficult end. Pathway 3 is the most difficult of those pathways. So no risk, just more demonstration that the region is capable of doing this stuff, provided, of course, that they do it well.
Thank you.
Name change.
I actually have to, I continually use the shorthand. Te Rūnanga Nui or Ngāti Porou is not part of this. Ngāti Porou is all over this. Half the people whose names are in the working party are Ngāti Porou. It's just the Rūnanga Nui is not part of this.
Now I'm asking what for a name change.
Okay.
If you would have a government turnover and then you have to change the name, what's the point of changing the name? Go away tuku with tuku no.
Yeah.
I'm Derek and Derek, that's Derek. I don't change my name. Ngāti Porou, they're not going to change their name. Turanga Nui Āpio, we're not going to change our name. I think we can put some pretty strong posts in the ground.
Yeah, so I've said to Willie and Amo that we need to stop calling it the community commissioning entity.
Yeah.
But yeah, the name change from government change is the difference between social investment and social wellbeing. That's all.
Thank you, Judy.
Some big ones. So 21. I'm not sure. Now we've got, till, you know.
Yes, that's just going to see them.
Was actually meeting with Willis and Porter yesterday about this idea. Community mentioning coming up. That's clear on how to put the family together. I know what there's $70 million worth of social services being every year.
Yeah, here we go. Let's see.
2% of that. And one of the things is what is being there's all this commissioning to do. You're asking us to jump all these through research for that. Yeah. But we can actually prove that we've done it. So it's give us
Right, let's figure it out. Showing us.
Julie said, said there was
Where's our money with the wheelies?
Well, they definitely did the 200 million for station.
Yeah.
The hard part is, getting other ones hard to say it's.
Yeah.
Getting MSC appropriations, that's tricky. Could the Minister of Finance see what you want,
Yeah, exactly.
but the runway is short.
Yeah.
Government's going to shut down in July.
Yeah.
So they run before July.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. Decent size. Yeah. Hey.
Okay, Kenya with what Kenya to me, Yatata, for we my name, the Wataya with Kenya. Me pene hoki hoki kuru ki puto, sai mai nei Kenya. I te awa puni, tau hoki au e tiroa. E awa tōtō te takotora. Taki whaiti. Ka tira ngā rengi whaiti, haramai nā tō. Ngā mana whakatike teke, o tātou moana. Awa puni. Koe anora I tēnei rā, ka tuku mihi ki o tātou ma te huhua o te wā, e hinga turu nei, e hinga āpira. E te whanau, hara mai koe I era o tātou whanau, I here tau, ki Ngāti Kaurunu, ka tau da here tia nei ki a Kaurunu ki tūranga, ki a Ruarauhanga, tēnei mātou tēnei. O te rei a koutou ngā kākākirea, o tēnā pito, o tēnā pito, o tēnā pito, o te rohe, hui mai nei I raru I te kaupapa o te rā, Tairāwhiti tēnei. Ka tira, anei rā mātou, me o mātou taringa, e are ana ki te whakarongo, ki ngā koro, ka tira, rātou kia rata, tātou nei ngā waiho tangiho, kia ora tātou. I ke te tau I te ira amutu, I a John Baker, e tana e kāmura te parane, e mahi para, e mahi pare, mahi a te parana. E haere e ki te hi ika, I ngā te kaitā o ngā ika. Me te pātai nei, hea te take I haere e ki te hi, me ngā whare kei te tūhanga turu nei, I tūranga. Koe anō, o whiti te rā. Tēnei marama nei, o haki hea, ka ti heru tia te wai ki o tātou mate, o te wā, o te harikoa, o te mirikri, me te tau hau, te tau au pāhea, tēnei tātou tēnei rā, e hui mai nei raru I kāmara, tēnei o tātou kaupapa. Ka tira huri no, tēnā koutou, I ka kia ora tātou tātou. Wātea.
Tika ana pia, ka tū tētai o mātou, te whakaoki atu I ngā mihi te mau ki a koutou. Nā reira, I te matua I te rangatira, e te ankara, tēnā noho I koe, I o mihi, kua whakatakoto hia nei, kua whāriki hia nei ki a mātou. O tira o whanaunga, ko hoki mai, ko tutu mai nei no I a koutou me tēnei kaupapa o tātou. I runga anō I ngā mihi o te wā, e tika ana, meri krihi mete ki a tātou. Me te mea anō hoki, ko te tikanga o te krihi mete ki a mau mai I tētahi perehana. Tēnā pia, tātou kaupapa ko mau I tēnei rā te perehana, mō koutou mō tātou o te Tairāwhiti, hoi anō. I runga anō I o tātou nā tini aitu e tika ana, whāreki hea o tātou nā tini aitu kia mihi hiake, kia tangi hiake te rānei. O tira kia tātou e ngā purapura pai o rātou mā tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātou, koutou e te ahurewa, me ki ake ngā pau o tēnei o ngā rūnanga, koutou o te Trust Tairāwhiti nei, tēnei te mihi. Tēnei te mihi, tēnei wahanga o te tau o tira, ko tono mai nei I tēnei wahanga ki a tātou, kia te tū mai I runga anō I a koutou I tēnei wahanga ki a koutou, ki te whakātu hia I tō tātou kaupapa. O tira, tō tātou kaupapa, nui whakaharara, nui whakahirahira, mo te rohine. Hoi anō I tēnei wā tunu, kia koutou, te tiamana nei, o tira, ki o kai whakahaere katoa, tēnā koutou, ngā tini whanaunga, I wainganui a koutou, kia koe anō hoki e te pūoho, me te moho anō hoki ana, o whanaunga nei, no Ngāti toa, no Ngāti tama, e tuake nei tēnei ka mihi. O tira I tēnei wā tonu, kia ora tātou. I'll actually hand it over to the chiefs. Get us started, but what I'll do, I'll just introduce myself very shortly. My name is Wirihana Wirihani, been involved with Te Awa Wānanga Trust for just over a year now. I actually live in Here Taunga, but try and find a reason to always come back to it later. Kia ora tātou, Wirihana.
Tēnā tātou, ko roa whaiti toko ingoa, e wiri o te kaipoho, ngā te aui aui, no tēnā tātou.
I'm Anthony Creswell, I've been on the trust for a couple of years, and I'm pleased to be here.
Wolfgang Kentz, I've been involved in the trust on this project last year or so, and before that I was at GEC. I'm a water specialist.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Tēnā harikoa ki te tū, I tēnei rā. To present the project plan. My name is Samuel Lewis, noko nei, no titiraki, no papa tū, no ngā maunga katoa. That's richness of whakapapa, right? We can connect to all of these places. If I may, I just want to get a bit of room away from the TV so that I can see it, and I don't want to stand in front of you. Opening Wānanga has a very rich background. we speak of it today as we tell all the stories. Derek is well versed and like many of us in its historical past, it's a place of provision. It not only as a highway, we lived around it, it was once the mouth to the Waipawa, or Kopututia it was once called. And yeah, a very, very rich place. We tend to look at it today in memory. It's a lot of it is all in memory. Lots of comments about, oh, it wants to return to what it once was, and it's a water holding body. Unfortunately, because of the practices that take place there, no one gets to interact with it. Rather, it's all eye candy. And it's farmed sheep and beef, and it's a finishing unit. I think that's the theme of this whole project. It's about provisioning, and I will come back to the structure that governs the trust that governs the property towards the end. But it is very much in an infant state. When we first set out on this project, all we had was stories, and so we built a bit of a storyboard here today, and we would really like to delve into that in as little time as possible and leave time for questions at the end of it. So, yeah.
That's not like it.
So we set out with this project, obviously, with the Tairāwhiti Water kaupapa, the Regional Economical Action Plan, and you know, the key points that were in there, the 1,000 hectares that would increase GDP. And so this project is really focused on uplifting Tairāwhiti as a region. Diving deeper into it as we went into it, it was like everything started to become illuminated in that it offered so many potentials, and they were all based on exploring all the impacts of Aopunimwana. It is impacted by stormwater, it's by every bit of water, by salt water, and then what we don't get to see is the impacts of the aquifers that are underneath. So the project is really aimed at taking care of all of the issues that we currently face, and more significantly about protecting what we have, and as well as igniting new kaupapa.
Just to add to that, I think technically it presents a really sustainable solution to solving a lot of problems that relate to water. That includes the availability of water for farming. We know we've got the best lands here to grow produce, but we don't have enough water. At the same time, we have lots of wastewater. Too much wastewater goes out into the bay, and there's a directive in the resource consent for council to stop that practice from happening. And at the same time, we've got the aquifers which are suffering because too much water has been taken out of the ground. So we actually have, this site, because of this location, represents great opportunity to solve all those in an integrated way. And just to show you this map here, there's green dots. The red color is the seawater, the green is the freshwater. So it really is almost across the entire interface of fresh and salty. And so through the project plan, we think we've developed a process and a concept that we can assess how can one integrate all these different waters to achieve a solution that provides the extra water, solves the wastewater discharge problem, and can not only safeguard the existing aquifer, but provide more water to provide for more agriculture. So it's really a strategic location.
We have lots of potentially productive land in this green belt here, you know, Manatuka and Muriwai area, where there's not a lot of water allocation in there. Basically, Māori are locked out of all allocation. They just don't have ability. We're over allocated. There are cuts projected for in the future, and so we think that we can actually provision the 1,000 hectares that is projected in the plans, and much more.
What's the next one? One back, you too far. How do I go back? That's where you were. Yeah, no, stop touching. One. Okay, this one click does it, okay. And just very quickly, because we want to get through as quickly as possible and answer questions. The blue area is the land, managed by the Tairāwhiti Trust. And so we can just really see how strategic its location is. It's at the entrance to the city, pretty much. Everyone comes with the state highway, drives past it. You can see the airport to the north of it. Long there has been mooted the possibility of connecting a road, it's actually a paper road from the airport down to the highway. And so in terms of, and then the ports on this side, and then all the strategic roads are shown on there. It really is located right in a really strategic position where we can not only take advantage of the potential for solving the water issues, like a whole lot of other things like tourism, the water sports facility, etc., because they all kind of work together. And just to reiterate what Samuel was saying, at the bottom there you've got the old map of the Wānanga. It's not the oldest map, obviously, but historically the water flowed up through the Wānanga and up here. And so really, you know, in a contemporary sense, we can't get it back to that. But all the work we're doing leading us to look at water and redefine its purpose in terms of its original state. So that's, somebody want to add anything to that? Button. And just to show you what something like this could look like, this is obviously done before the feasibility is done, and we're really looking to do the feasibility, but you know, there's opportunity, lots of area available for a world-class water sports facility. One could have it over here. We've spoken to the airport, and there's ways to overcome concerns about birds and things like that. This could become a whole tourism hub. We could have a wastewater wetland at this bottom end, which satisfies the council concerns about, well, Mana Whenua concerns about wastewater and the council requirements to deal with it. And we can do all this and look at other land uses through this process while securing that water source for regional development from the agricultural sector. So then that's why the project plan has multiple facets to it. Look at a really truly integrated project that ticks a lot of the boxes.
Yeah, I think also potential developments on our Wānanga are still coming to light. We've had engagements with the different directors of GDC. They're asking if we would be interested in housing, sports facilities and centres, one that they're currently looking at building. So those are conversations that sit ahead of us. But just in terms of potential, there is lots of them. These figures are projected off the 1,000 acres that Trust Tairāwhiti put out in the economic action plan. Of course, you know, things roll on, since documents are produced, and of course there's lots of other projects. We believe that our Wānanga is not one solution. It's about coming up with many solutions that can provide security and provision, well-being. We certainly would not only protect but add to the uplift in jobs across the region, and I'd like to touch on the Whenua Tōpū model here that the trust sits under. Whenua Tōpū is a part of the Te Ture Whenua framework, and Whenua Tōpū is for Māori community purposes. And so every cent that the trust makes goes back into the community. And so an investment in Tairāwhiti is actually a further investment into the community with all the feedback from you. So it's a great structure. We sit, as I said earlier, in an infant stage, and but the potential for initiatives that would come off any developments that we do, it's endless. So just really like to touch on that. And we'll move into the next slide.
Yeah, so this is just a little visual I put together. So putting together this project plan was not an easy task. There's so many moving parts and so many different stakeholders and people who are interested and affected. And so, yeah, we've through this process, we worked with a whole group of specialists in developing the project plan. And we engaged with all the various stakeholders and interested parties in putting together a scope of works to look at this in detail. And it's been quite an interesting journey. We've had nothing but support. We've had no fatal flaws identified in terms of the technical aspects of it. And through this process, we've actually got to a stage now where we've developed a project plan which already has all the scope of works for all the specialists, pretty much ready to press the go button and then undertake the work to work out what is feasible and how is it feasible. And we just want to thank also the Trust for providing funding for this, because this has enabled us now to go through this process and look at it holistically. Yeah, really put together something that we think would tick a lot of different boxes across the city and the region in terms of the correct development of that opening mono land. Yes, a lot of people involved, and yeah, so far no fatal flaws, and everyone's quite really optimistic about it.
In terms of timelines, we've spent the last 12 months, Tairāwhiti provisioned, along with GDC and our own investment, the building of this project plan. And a lot of unforeseeables in there, but here we are, we finally made it to your table. We have a project plan, and so the project plan is made up of 4 phases, and it was important to have something that was tangible. No one was going to back you without it, and so the next phase of it is feasibility. And so you'll see up here that we've done all the costings for what feasibility would entail in terms of financial support or input. It's the total is 950k with contingency, and excluding GST. In terms of timelines, we're here. We've adjusted all of these up just recently, but yeah, you know, we would hope to get ignited in January 26th or February, March maybe, and everything else is subject to their coming down to finishing the feasibility. Feasibility will be rolled out over the year, and then moving into implementation on agreed projects. So, yeah.
Just to add to that, because it's such a complex site, there's a lot of different specialist requirements. You can see a list of them down there, and if you look at the draft report, the first version of the report, you'll see all those in there. And there's a lot of different moving parts, and so a lot of different special input. But we've identified all those, and we have scopes to do those. Just to note, through the feasibility process, we have a very strong focus on the financial aspects of it, and the the ongoing sustainability of financing such a project. There's so many different moving parts, and so we would envisage through the process that you identify the first cabs off the rank, the sort of projects that then enable next projects to happen, to to support the funding of subsequent projects, because there's so many elements you wouldn't all do in 1 year. And so what we imagine is that you do a feasibility study over a year, and that's how long it would take, because you have to do a whole lot of feasibility specialist work. But then from that point onwards, we'd have a very structured approach moving forward, knowing what are the low-hanging fruits that you can start off with. What's the most important? We probably would consider, or fairly sure it's most important, would be looking at the water provision and see if we can crack that as a first step to enable that water resource to be available for farming, etc. And then you might find that some of the other aspects that are being considered in this feasibility take a bit longer to start, because you wouldn't be able to do all of this in a year. There's lots of contingencies and things like and dependencies. Yeah, and of course there'd be ongoing operations costs and so on. So all that is included in our feasibility study to make sure that overall whole life the project is financially feasible. So apart from getting all the environmental and water benefits and development.
We think this project is exemplary. It has the ability to, I think, really increase GDP and well-being in Tairāwhiti. We think that it is the key to solving and protecting what we already have that's actually quite in trouble. And we think we tick the boxes outlined in the Tairāwhiti water above and beyond. We think it's a great collaborative opportunity for future benefits. Right across the board, and the communities have absolute, I think, are reliant on these types of projects to reduce stats, to increase other stats, and to really lead us forward in the future. Department type approach in its own unique way. This is very worrying, these parts here, these challenges, and it's a lack of water, water disposal, with the waste pipe out, ocean outfall pipe out there. Our people have fortified that, I think, is actually what progressed the wastewater treatment plant coming into play to clean the thing up. They fought since 1960, since its inception, and I think that we actually have the solutions to bring that all to a close for what is outlined in the long-term plan for the district, and that is land-based solutions to wastewater and to stop the impact. With that, we certainly have the ability to contribute to GDP and the uplift in jobs in Tairāwhiti. I think I'd like to express here at this point that the potential of Punimuana Trust to play a big role in provisioning community outcomes and investing every cent that it grows, every cent that people like yourselves invest into us, it's actually going to get returned to the community. And so with that, I'd like to take time to thank you for the time to present this. Thank you for the financial input, and the last thing I'd like to say is that for us to progress, feasibility is absolutely key. And of course, it comes down to the dollars. So it's like you open the floor to any questions if there's anything or comments.
Just a couple off the back of Samuel. So if it wasn't clear, so the trust has supported Punimuana through the feasibility fund that we usually have. So 25K, I think GDC also put money in, and so did the trust. So they've funded phase 1 of the feasibility, which the outcomes are here being presented today. And ultimately it's identified what does phase 2 feasibility look like. for this particular project and what, and some imagination around what it could look like and how it could support us. So 800,000 plus some contingency is what's required for phase 2. Alex and others have been sort of working in the background to see what we could do to support the trust, but ultimately this morning was about presenting the work that's been done so far and also just sharing what this project is, particularly the trustees, and just have that initial conversation around being clear on it, because a lot of people are mentioning putting Wānanga alongside other potential water storage projects in the region, and so just thought it was a good chance for the trustees of Wānanga to come and just share what the project is.
Any questions from the trustees?
Just an easy one.
Yeah.
What's been your interaction with the regional investment fund, their feasibility on them, they have available, etc.? How long?
We, after Shane Jones presented here, I think 12, 18 months ago, on regional development, we did meet with them. We had nothing. All we had was a story. And so that ignited the building of the project plans and the searching around. So now we have something that's tangible. It is time to, approach and approach. You're the first.
The feasibility funding is the one that you don't have to pay back, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
Free money.
Yeah, sure.
So you get your hands on that.
Sure.
Samuel, what's your knowledge of in the coding effort to recharge, and how will could that address, my understanding addresses the filter concern there around water, and actually by recharging that, it pushes the salinity back out. That's my understanding. So are you aware of that? And is there going to be an overlapping interest there? That's one question. And from a risk perspective, tsunami risk, and what would that possibly look like? The impact of whatever development is. So sure.
Yeah, I've had extensive involvement in the Makoti Aquifer recharge over a number of years now. Mar Limited, that they are really supportive of what we're up to. Everything's connected where water is involved in settlement, and we have ocean outfall. I have to ask a question: if you're putting a litre of water into the aquifer with ocean outfall, how much are you going to get back? And so at our end of it, where it's underneath us, it is falling out there. There's potential to also support lifting the extraction of what they're recharging.
So it complements the work.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as well as when there's big drawdown, there is that on the tree and sure. Yeah, the health is working.
And just note that piece of land lies over 2 aquifers, one being the Tairāwhiti Sands aquifer, which is a shallow aquifer, and a lot of the farms around there draw water out of that. And then in a deeper, it's also the Tairāwhiti aquifer. So in our technical work, we discussed with the groundwater specialists, we've spoken about how would we contribute to both, and how would we increase the water available to both. So that will be come through the process.
There is also a massive increase in saline intrusion from the western base of the White Pile. So, all out there by Peter's Place and stuff all underneath there, it's flowing in. The bigger the drawdown, hydraulics probably cause it to come into this site. So it's on the increase, and it is in trouble.
One really quick question. In 12 months' time, what does success look like for you?
Having gone through feasibility, and we would be able to then refine what these projects look like, confirm what are we doing, and have a plan which we always be building a plan on the thinking into development.
Well, just add to that, we ideally with the sort of keystone projects like the water supply. The feasibility would take us to a stage where we really press to go on the resource consent process to start going through that, because that can take a while. And so we'll have identified everything required to go to the next step. We'll know it's feasible, and then we're going to a resource consent process. There'll be multiple consents. They can't do it during the feasibility stage, obviously, but we'd have all the information that enables us to proceed with the first cab with the rank.
Thanks.
Okay. William, Rapapa, Anthony. Ina rā te kore harai te whātai, engari he tautatanga. I puta mai I ngā waitaha, ngā program, ngā kui, e ki ana. Ko makauri anake, I mahue atu, I waho I toka ahuru, ko te peka e rere mai ki utara, ai pura mō maha. Ko te pūmana wā wē nā kore, e taura wai, e tautatanga. O awa puni te taura wai. Taku mōheo I putai, wē rā kore, mena ka ha ora, a awa puni. Ka ha ora tātou katoa. No reira e tautoko ana au I taku rongo ta ngāke I ngā kore ki a tātua tēnei project ne, tēnei. No reira kami e kore ka wēnu tu ngāme.
Tēnā koe te mea.
Just looking at the one that showed, the map that showed the water treatment, which is towards the river, is there any perceived, or how much of perceived risk is there of, say, the Waipawa flooding, backing up and pushing that water up into that lovely recreational area? So, and what measures had you anticipated? I mean, maybe too early to answer that, of course, but yeah.
So should that happen, with quite an extreme event, but should it happen, the aquatic centre itself, because the land is so low lying, we're actually looking at building it up. They probably find the crest of the race course, the water course facility, would be at around 4.5 meters above sea level, whereas the opening miner is in some parts below sea level. So that the likelihood of causing any damage or mixing with that water would be extremely low, because the velocity wouldn't be high, it would be more ponding up and receiving.
Yeah, thanks. I'd assume that
and the
blue and green was just going to be at that current level. But
no, it would, well, partly it's worked up in the feasibility stage. But the one thing we do know at the moment also is that the water sports facility will be lined. To make sure that you can control the water quality of it, even just natural groundwater, you don't want to have that. And we have various options to fill it, with stormwater, with rainwater, with seawater, etc. There's a whole lot of options, but the idea would be to isolate that water so you can manage it to be 100% safe all the time.
Right. So it would be a significant surge. It would have to be a huge surge there. Okay.
It would be flowing over the dunes before it flows into that.
Okay.
I might just close this out with couple more questions. And then, so just segueing from that, have you worked with any of the other landowners like Paukahu along the front there? I think some of those answers in and around that sandbank staying along the front of it, in terms of what Tairāwhiti is saying in terms of, it being really important in terms of the insurance and risk. So I'd be interested. There's no answer there. I'm just, we farm it. And so my second question was just around ensuring that you're probably also showing what you're giving up, because Tairāwhiti is giving up farmland and productive farmland and the ability to do this for the region. So I'll just suggest, having that in terms of your own presentation, because I think that's missing a little bit in here. There's the opportunity out here, but there's also the opportunity cost that Tairāwhiti is giving up to be able to do that for the community at the same time.
Yeah, so just quickly on your first question, yes, we've engaged with Paukahu. They're fully in support of this project. So that's why we also Corpus Tuxedo in the front there as well. Yeah. What was the second?
Just including your opportunity.
Choosing your farmland into
Giving up your farmland, in order to do
So
that.
sacrifice is a measure of credibility, I think. They don't. In sync with what we've been doing a long time.
Exactly.
But in actual fact, it's actually, it is listening to the land, with regards to, it fills up with water. All of the time we're impacted from that. I do know that it provides for also, Arai Matawai, who we leased the property to at this point in time. And, but you know, it's on the city boundary. There's all sorts of, things here that weigh into, it's wise to consider other things. And, as Derek outlined, it's about people. First and foremost, it's about people. And the benefits that can be attained out of there. Part of the feasibility study is actually working through economical balance for the trust. Yeah. And so we have an expert in that field, who will undertake that, and we think that there's potential for it to be very lucrative for people.
I would just add to that, that farming is something you would consider in feasibility study, even continued farming, augmented farming with water supply now. And so, just intuitively speaking, with a water supply that you might not have available, I think the opportunities for increasing your farming outputs, in addition to having all these other things going on, are tremendous. Yeah, I really would. I can't, it's inconceivable to think that you'd be able to do less farming afterwards. I think it depends how you do it.
Yeah, I think utilising future development, we could actually look at irrigating the land as we're moving out of it, or pile cutting as well, and then you can actually use a lot of this land as you transition.
Process.
Which is a little bit of an insight knowledge, because it's good, because we farm along there in with another head. So.
Chairman, sorry, just the last one. So you'll have a lens around a commercial return from it once it's developed, correct? So it'll attract investment, not going to require continual funding. It's going to be an attractive proposition.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Has to stand on its own legs.
I think the point you made though, so even though there'll be a commercial proposition, the whenua tōpū model, the governance model that they have over the land, they must distribute it back to the community. So,
I was just wanting some clarity around that, because I wasn't sure whether it was.
It'll definitely be a charging.
Yeah.
User pays, model. I think it has to be in order to stand up.
Business models.
If you wanted to have a look at it, it's section.
Love the AI.
I'll forward it through the sometimes come a little bit, and but out there it sets out the types of things. Basically, the trust can do anything to do with community business. So names, roading, housing, education, health, everything. So that's we can't spend our money on any individuals, and it all goes back into the community. I think we're well aligned.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Thanks for coming in and sharing with us. It has been on our radar for a while, working through, so it's good to have an opportunity. I don't think we all got to introduce ourselves properly at the beginning in terms of trustees, but I'm sure this won't be the last time we have this, put it all together and kind of work things through. It is good to see, on our, not even our backyard, it's our front yard and our backyard, the mahi that you guys are doing. So we appreciate it, and we definitely will keep in contact. So,
can I just say that also the final project plan, it's just been placed into a PDF, so I'll get that through to Doug, and if you have any questions, please look through it, and yeah, we're happy to answer any questions.
And I think it's good opportunities, especially, just in like the stuff Nikki was talking around, as the trust is involved with other government agencies and funding, it's not just where it comes from us, and that's how we can connect them together on those.
Sure.
Yes, sounds, yeah, there's a lot of projects. Yeah. 100 million.
Nice and easy. Just moving that we, good presentation. There's nothing else in the updates, but I do need to pass the, excluding the public. So can you get them over in a second for that, please? Warren, Ron, those favour? Aye. So we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back here, actually, if we can do it in 7 minutes. 11:10, we'll do 20 minutes.